The air in the church felt thick and stagnant, as if pressing down on my chest with an invisible weight. Each step echoed sharply off the polished floor, but other sounds seemed to drown in the ominous silence. Whispers, glances, even the frantic beating of my heart, all felt alien and hostile. I felt like an outsider here, an uninvited guest. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I felt the weight of their gazes. I didn't need to look up to know I was being discussed, judged. Then, like a whip crack, his mother's voice cut through the silence. Quiet, but full of venom. She doesn't belong here. I froze. My hands instinctively clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. I hadn't even made it to the third row of pews. She sat by the altar, a black veil only slightly concealing the icy fury in her eyes. Her jaw was tight, lips pressed together as if she were holding back a scream. Her grief was palpable, real. I could see it, but I also saw the rage simmering within her. With difficulty, I swallowed and forced myself to keep walking. Each step felt incredibly heavy, as if I were dragging a ton behind me. My legs begged me to turn around and run, but something deep inside, perhaps guilt, or perhaps something even more terrible, kept me in place. Emma stood up. Jacob's sister, fiercely loyal, always ready to fight when others remained silent in fear. Her gaze, like sharpened daggers, pierced right through me. "You broke him," she said. Not a whisper, not a scream. It was a sentence, firm and merciless. Behind me, there was a muffled sound of a dropped program. Someone couldn't take it anymore. The air seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream, to justify myself, to say that I never wanted to hurt him, that he comes to me in my dreams at night, that I still struggle with the question, what if I had stayed? But the words stuck in my throat like a lump. Maybe she's right. A betraying flush crept into my cheeks. A spasm tightened my throat. My eyes stung with tears, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these judgmental eyes. Turning around, I fled. I knew it would be like this. I should have listened to my mom when she said, "Olivia, are you sure you want to go there? It won't bring him back." But before I could take a second step, my name echoed in the deafening silence. Olivia. The priest's voice was quiet but firm, like a beacon of calm in this raging sea of grief. He stood at the altar, his eyes filled with sympathy, a thin white envelope in his hand. He said he had been asked to read it aloud. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. My name, written in a familiar, careless handwriting. Jacob's handwriting. 2 years. A lifetime. Since I had seen it, but I would recognize it anywhere. My legs turned to jelly, and I clutched the edge of the pew to keep from falling. What could he have written to me? Why? I looked up and drowned in the stares. Some looked with pity, others with contempt, but most with morbid curiosity, as if waiting to see what other nasty drama Jacob had prepared as a final act. My fingers trembled as I reached for the letter. The envelope was soft, worn, as if it had been held in hundreds of hands. Maybe it had been. Maybe he had written it long ago, or maybe just a few days before he died. I didn't know. I wanted to run, to disappear. But something inside demanded an answer. Why me? Why is this happening? Taking a deep breath, I turned to face the crowd and tore open the envelope. I wasn't ready for this letter. Not at all. But I had to read it. Not out of courage, but out of a sense of duty, after everything that had been between us. As my fingers tore the seal, fragments of memories of our breakup flooded my mind. No scandal, no farewell words, just silence. One day, an argument. The next, we were strangers. Before I reveal the contents of that letter, I must tell you about us. My name is Olivia Blake. Jacob and I met when I was only 21 years old. I am the embodiment of noise. Laughter always too loud, dreams impossibly grand. He was completely different, quiet, as if he harbored raging storms inside that never broke free. And perhaps it was this hidden intensity that drew me to him. It seemed he saw right through me, understood me like no one else. 4 years. 4 years full of beauty, pain, and chaos. I won't lie by painting an idyllic picture. No, it wasn't perfect at all. Sometimes it felt like we were orbiting different planets, forever doomed to loneliness in outer space. But in those happy days, God, we burned as one. Soulmates. At least that's what I thought, until I wasn't enough anymore. In the last year of our relationship, something broke. Jacob stopped opening up, started withdrawing. Not physically, no, emotionally. To my questions about what was wrong, he answered tersely, "Everything's fine," and looked right through me, as if I were a ghost. He no longer held my hand in the street, didn't smile at my silly jokes, and the words, "I love you," sounded hollow, devoid of any meaning. And I began to crumble, not knowing how to love a person who had slammed the door to their inner world. I fought. I swear, I tried everything. Therapy, endless conversations, separation, attempts to be close, tears, silence. Nothing helped. Nothing at all. That night, gathering only one bag in my trembling hands, I left the keys lying forlornly on the kitchen table and left. It was the most agonizing decision of my life. My mother, seeing my pain, whispered, "You're doing the right thing, darling. You can't burn to ashes trying to warm someone who doesn't appreciate your warmth." I nodded silently, but since then, every night, I have been tormented by the question, didn't I run away too soon? Didn't I abandon a person who just needed a little more of my faith and patience? 2 long years have passed. 2 years without a single glance at Jacob, without a single word. And then, last week, a phone call from Emma. Her voice was like cracked glass, cold and lifeless. No greeting, no perfunctory, "How are you?" Just an icy, "Jacob is gone. The funeral is on Friday. Don't you dare come." But I came. Not for them, full of hatred and reproaches. I came for him, for that part of me that still held the image of the guy I fell in love with at 21, and cherished the dream of the life we could have had. I hoped this last look would be my farewell, my liberation. I didn't expect kindness or forgiveness, but I couldn't have imagined that I would be handed a letter. His letter. Right at the funeral, in front of everyone who considered me guilty of his death. Holding it in my hands, I once again heard that treacherous whisper inside myself, which I had been trying to suppress for so long. What if he hated me? What if this letter is his last curse? What if I really caused his downfall? The envelope felt like an unbearable weight in my palms, not only physically, but also morally. I felt Emma's searing gaze drilling into me. I caught the murmur of his mother out of the corner of my ear, turning into an inarticulate grumble. The priest delicately stepped aside, leaving me alone with this message. Alone with him for the last time. But I still couldn't bring myself to start reading. The seal broke with a soft crack, but in that ringing silence, the sound echoed like a clap of thunder. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the letter, and my breath caught. I couldn't immediately bring myself to read. I just looked at the first line, recognizing his handwriting. That careless slant of the letters, those playful curls that always warmed my heart when he left notes on the refrigerator or wrote touching "I miss you" messages on the bathroom mirror. But now it was different. This was his last word, and everyone around was waiting to hear it through my lips. I raised my eyes and drowned in the gazes fixed on me. Each of them was full of its own. In some, there was undisguised suspicion. In others, outright hatred. And in the eyes of the priest, something that vaguely resembled grief flickered. My throat suddenly went dry, as if I had swallowed a handful of sand. I blinked frequently, trying to hold back the tears. Not yet. I turned my head to the right and met Emma's gaze. Her jaw was tightly clenched, her arms crossed over her chest, as if she was struggling with all her might not to jump from her seat, run to the altar, and snatch the letter from my hands. A sharp pain pierced my stomach, and with it, an irresistible wave of guilt. Maybe I really shouldn't have come here. Do I even deserve the right to hear these words? These thoughts tormented me like venomous snakes. Our last conversation with Jacob flashed back into my memory. We were sitting in his car outside my house. Rain, not heavy, but raw, made the world around us gray and heavy. Jacob was looking straight ahead, through the windshield, avoiding my gaze, and I was begging him to talk to me. I remember whispering, choking with despair. "Please, say something. I need something. I don't know how to fight for us if you don't want to." And he, without taking his eyes off the road, said, "Maybe I don't want to be fought for anymore." I don't think I ever recovered from those words. That night I left, packed my things in the morning, and never came back. So, maybe Emma was right. Maybe I broke him. Or maybe he was already broken, and I just wasn't enough to save him. When a loved one leaves gradually, you don't notice it until they disappear completely. And when they leave forever, there remains only a mountain of agonizing maybes. The priest came closer and touched my elbow with concern. "Take your time," he whispered softly, as if sensing how I was shaking all over. I nodded, not knowing exactly what I was agreeing to. To read it now, or wait. But later never came. The letter was a reality, clutched in my hand. The room froze, watching. I understood. If I didn't speak up right away, my courage would leave me, and I would miss my only chance to understand what Jacob wanted to tell me. And I did what I had to do. A deep, shaky breath, and I began to read. "Olivia," I said aloud, my voice trembling betrayingly. "If you're hearing this, I'm already gone." A wave of stifled sighs swept through the room. Even Emma flinched in her chair. I continued, my eyes darting frantically across the lines, and what I saw next made my knees buckle. The next sentence was not what anyone expected, especially me. My voice cracked as I read, "Please don't let them turn you into the villain in my story." For a moment, I was speechless. I just stared at the letter, as if the words could somehow rearrange themselves into a different meaning, but they remained unchanged, undeniable. Instinctively, I looked up and met Emma's gaze. For the first time since I had entered the room, her face expressed not anger and hatred, but confusion. And that gave me a tiny spark of courage, as if I might be able to continue, as if I needed to continue. With difficulty, I swallowed the lump stuck in my throat and continued reading aloud. "You left because you had to. I wasn't letting you love me the way you wanted to. I understand that now. Maybe I always did." My breath hitched, as if someone had squeezed my chest. I fell silent, staring at the letter, my fingers clutching the paper convulsively. It began to wrinkle under my fingers, but it didn't matter. For the first time in 2 long years, I heard him. Really heard him. And there was no reproach or anger in his words. Only understanding. A shaky laugh escaped my lips. One of those empty, broken laughs that burn from the inside. I thought this letter would be like a knife, I whispered. But it turned out to be more like a healing bandage. I don't know why I said it aloud. Maybe I just forgot that there was anyone else in the room. Or maybe the moment was too overwhelming to keep it to myself. The priest discreetly stepped back, as if giving more space not to me, but to Jacob, whose words were now being spoken. Lowering my gaze, I continued reading. There are things that I could never tell you, not because I didn't want to, but because I just didn't know how to. You always asked me to open up, and I built walls around myself. And it's not your fault, Olivia. It's all me. I was afraid you would see the real me. But you saw it anyway, and that scared me to death. You were the only one who made me feel safe, Olivia. And I deeply regret that I couldn't return the same. That sentence shattered something deep inside me. For a second, I pressed the letter to my chest, trying to quell the trembling. Just to not fall apart here, in front of them. Just to not cry in front of these people who saw me only as a mistake. But Jacob, even after death, he saw me. I glanced at his mother. Her face was still frozen in a mask, but her shoulders had slumped slightly, and her hands were no longer clenched into fists. Gathering my courage, I stepped towards the altar, and my voice finally sounded more confident. I don't want you to carry my darkness as your own, so I left this letter so you would know the truth. You didn't break me, Olivia. I was already broken. And those words changed everything. Emma blinked frequently and looked away. The priest slowly exhaled. Even the silence in the hall became different. Less tense. More stunned. I folded the letter. My hands finally stopped shaking. The decision to come here now seemed like the only right one. Not easy, not painless, but right. And when I turned to face the people who once thought I didn't deserve to be here, it dawned on me. Jacob didn't write this letter to put an end to things. He wrote it for forgiveness. Mine. Having finished reading, I froze, as if struck by lightning. In my hands, the letter felt burning hot, as if it had absorbed everything, the tremor in my voice, the burning shame, and the deafening silence that hung over the hall. Not a sound. Even the priest was silent. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was filled with something, as if everyone present had exhaled at once, freeing themselves from a burden they hadn't even suspected. Slowly, I scanned the faces. The recent condemnation had been replaced by confusion. Many eyes glistened with tears. Someone was shyly looking away, realizing how easily they had believed the worst. But I was looking for Emma. And then I saw her. She was no longer sitting. Having risen from her seat, she stood, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the pew. Her eyes were red, but remained dry. It seemed she wanted to say something, but the words were stuck in her throat. A long, agonizing pause. We looked at each other, unable to look away. And suddenly, almost inaudibly, she whispered, so that only those in the first few rows could hear, Why didn't he tell us anything?" Something broke in her voice and in me. I didn't know what to answer. I doubt an answer even existed. This question had plagued me countless times throughout our relationship. Why couldn't you just talk to me? Jacob wasn't one to flaunt his pain. He locked it deep inside, like shards of glass in a hidden drawer. Invisible from the outside, but oh, how it cut from within. I think he wanted to protect you, I whispered. All of you. Emma remained silent, only offering a brief nod, as if those words were enough. But Jacob's mother. Had she forgiven me then? Maybe she never would. But I saw her furtively wipe her cheek with a black sleeve. Her gaze avoided mine, but the tension in her jaw eased slightly, and that was enough. The priest cleared his throat softly and stepped forward. We will now conclude the service with a prayer, he said quietly, with reverence in his voice. But I believe Jacob's words have already said everything. Many nodded in agreement. Others bowed their heads in silence. And I simply stood, clutching the letter to my chest, allowing the moment to permeate me completely. I had been afraid to enter this church. I thought it would be the most difficult ordeal of my life. I feared their anger would break me, and perhaps it almost did. But now, standing here, enveloped in Jacob's words like armor, I didn't feel crushed. On the contrary, I felt whole. For the first time in years, I wasn't tormented by what if, or maybe I should have. I had the truth, his truth, and it changed everything. As the ceremony drew to a close and people began to disperse, I noticed timid nods in my direction. No one uttered a word, but there was no longer any coldness or judgment in that silence. Only restrained respect. I stepped outside, gulping in the fresh afternoon air. The sky was still overcast with gray clouds, but a gentle glow was already breaking through the edges. A gust of wind ruffled my hair and played with the edge of the letter, which I hastily folded back into the envelope. Emma followed me. She was silent, merely crossing her arms tighter across her chest, trying to keep warm. Finally, as if each word caused her pain, she whispered, I hated you. I know. Not anymore, I replied, barely audible. I guess I just didn't know the whole truth. Neither of us smiled, but we understood each other now, and that was enough. I didn't go to the burial. Not because I didn't care, but because I had already said goodbye to Jacob the way he wanted me to, in front of everyone, with his own words. And, honestly, I think it was his last gift to me. I stood near the church for a long time after everyone had left. Silence reigned. Only the sky hung like a soft haze, as if it couldn't decide whether to burst into rain or offer a ray of sunshine. I liked this state of uncertainty. It so accurately reflected what was going on in my soul. Not broken, but not healed either. Just in limbo. I sank onto the cold stone steps, as if exhausted, and carefully retrieved the letter. I smoothed the crumpled envelope with my fingertips, not hurrying to read it. I simply held it in my hands, feeling it throb with warmth, like a living heart, a heart that would never beat again. He couldn't say it while he was alive, flashed through my mind. But he desperately wanted me to know, and it made me wonder, how many secrets do we keep to ourselves? How many words remain unspoken? How many people pass away without ever knowing they were loved? How many apologies are buried deep within the soul, never breaking free? Jacob was lost long before I left. But I carried that loss on my shoulders, as if I were destined to fix it. I blamed myself for his silence, for his sadness, for his slow fading away. For 2 long years I allowed that guilt to torment me, like a venomous snake. But now I could finally breathe freely. Not because he had exonerated me, but because even in his last moments, he had seen me. And that was stronger than any forgiveness I thought I needed so much. A few days after the funeral, Emma called. Not texted, not emailed, called. My heart pounded. and I barely found the strength to answer. She didn't say much, only admitted that the letter wouldn't leave her head, and asked if I would mind if she read it again. Without hesitation, I mailed her a copy. We didn't become best friends, and I doubt we ever will. But the ice had broken, the barriers had fallen, and sometimes that's enough for healing. Where silence had once loomed, space was now created. I picked up the pen again. It was something I had renounced after the breakup with Jacob. Part of me felt that I was no longer worthy of telling stories, as if the brightest chapter of my life had been turned, and beyond, only empty, lifeless pages. But I realized one important thing. Pain doesn't end the story. It only changes its sound. And Jacob wasn't the end of my book. He became the one who made her pages deeper, more complex, more human. He was the lesson I desperately needed, without even realizing it. And here's what I want to convey to you, especially if you're carrying a heavy burden on your shoulders or loving someone who doesn't know how to reciprocate. Let them go in peace. But hold on to the truth, because love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it manifests in the ability to let go, in the ability to enter a room full of people who hate you and read a letter that brings peace instead of screams. Sometimes love is what we leave behind, and sometimes that's what gives us freedom.